Marcus Wellington had built his empire from nothing. At 42, he owned a chain of luxury hotels across 3 continents, and his name appeared regularly in Forbes magazine. Success had come at a price, though. His marriage to Isabella had crumbled 2 years ago when she discovered his affair with his business partner's wife. The divorce was messy, expensive, and left him with custody of their 3 children only on weekends. The irony wasn't lost on him. A man who could manage 1,000-room hotels and coordinate international business deals couldn't handle his own family life. His penthouse apartment felt more like a museum than a home, with its pristine white walls and expensive artwork that his children were afraid to touch. He knew he was failing as a father, but work consumed every waking moment. There were always fires to put out, deals to close, and investors to impress. On this particular Tuesday evening, Marcus was returning from a 3-week business trip to Dubai. The deal he'd been working on for months had finally closed, securing him another $50 million in revenue. He should have felt triumphant, but exhaustion weighed heavily on his shoulders. The private jet landed at the airport just after sunset, and his driver was waiting with the usual black sedan. During the 40-minute drive to his estate in the hills, Marcus scrolled through his phone, checking emails and stock prices. His assistant had sent him updates about the children. 8-year-old Emma had a dance recital coming up. 12-year-old Michael was struggling with math again. And 6-year-old Lily had been asking when Daddy would come home. The messages made his chest tighten with guilt, but he pushed the feeling aside. Providing for them financially was his responsibility. Their mother could handle the emotional stuff. The estate came into view as they rounded the final bend. 20 acres of manicured lawns surrounded the modern glass mansion that had been featured in Architectural Digest. Marcus had bought it to impress clients and competitors, but it had never felt like home. Too big, too cold, too empty. The housekeeper usually left by 6, so he expected the house to be dark except for the security lights. Instead, warm yellow light glowed from the kitchen windows. Marcus frowned as the car pulled into the circular driveway. His ex-wife wasn't supposed to drop the kids off until Friday. Had there been some emergency? His stomach knotted as he imagined worst-case scenarios. Isabella was always responsible with the children's schedule, so something must be wrong. He thanked his driver and grabbed his briefcase from the back seat. The front door was unlocked, which was strange. Marcus always kept it secured with a complex alarm system. As he stepped into the marble foyer, he could hear voices coming from the direction of the kitchen. Not just any voices, his children's laughter, bright and carefree in a way he rarely heard when they were with him. Marcus set down his briefcase and loosened his tie. The sound drew him forward like a magnet. When had Emma last laughed like that in his presence? Usually, his children were polite but distant during their weekend visits, as if they were guests in his home rather than family. They would sit quietly at the formal dining table, answer his questions about school with one-word responses, and retreat to their rooms to watch television or play video games. He walked slowly toward the kitchen, his Italian leather shoes clicking against the marble floor. The voices became clearer as he approached. Emma was talking animatedly about something that happened at school. Michael was asking questions about homework. And Lily was singing a nonsense song in her sweet, high voice. There was another voice too, unfamiliar but warm, responding to each child with patience and genuine interest. Marcus paused at the kitchen entrance, hidden by the wall. Through the archway, he could see his children seated around the large kitchen island. Emma was perched on a bar stool, her school backpack at her feet. Michael had textbooks spread in front of him. Lily was coloring in a book while humming her little song. They looked relaxed and happy, more at ease than he'd seen them in months. But what stopped him cold was the woman moving between them. She was young, maybe in her mid-20s, with rich dark skin that glowed under the pendant lights. Her hair was pulled back in a simple ponytail, and she wore jeans and a soft blue sweater. She was stirring something on the stove while simultaneously helping Michael with his math problem and praising Emma's school project. "Miss Grace, look what I drew." Lily held up her coloring book, showing a picture of a house with a family standing in front of it. That's beautiful, sweetheart, the woman replied, her voice carrying a slight accent that Marcus couldn't quite place. Tell me about the people in your picture. That's Mommy, and that's Daddy, and that's Emma and Michael and me, Lily pointed to each figure. And that's you too, Miss Grace. You're part of our family now. The woman's face softened with emotion. That's the kindest thing anyone has ever said to me, Lily. Thank you. Marcus felt something shift in his chest. When was the last time one of his children had called him part of their family? When had they last spoken to him with such affection? He watched as the woman, Grace, checked the food on the stove, then moved to help Emma with her backpack. Every movement was natural and caring, as if she'd been doing this for years. Miss Grace, will you help me with my costume for the dance recital? Emma asked shyly. Of course, honey. What kind of costume do you need? It's supposed to be a butterfly. Mommy said she'll try to find one at the store, but she's been so busy with work. Grace knelt down to Emma's eye level. You know what? I think we can make an even better butterfly costume than anything from a store. We can use fabric and create something unique just for you. Would you like that? Emma's face lit up like Christmas morning. Really? You'd help me make it? Absolutely. We can work on it this weekend if you'd like. Michael looked up from his homework. Miss Grace, could you help me understand this algebra problem? I've been stuck on it for an hour. Let me see. Grace moved to stand behind Michael, looking over his shoulder at the textbook. Okay, so when you have x plus 5 equals 15, what do you think x might be? I don't know. That's why I'm stuck. Let's think about it like a puzzle. If you have some number, and you add 5 to it, you get 15. What number plus 5 equals 15? Marcus watched Michael's face scrunch up in concentration. 10. Exactly. So x equals 10. Now try the next problem using the same thinking. The patience in Grace's voice amazed Marcus. She didn't sound frustrated or rushed, even though she was simultaneously cooking dinner, helping with homework, and listening to Lily's chatter. His own attempts to help with homework usually ended in mutual frustration and hurt feelings. Miss Grace, Lily piped up, are you going to eat dinner with us? Well, I made enough for everyone, so if you'd like me to stay, I'd be happy to. Yes, all three children chorused together. Grace laughed, a sound that was warm and genuine. All right then, but first everyone needs to wash their hands and put away their things. Emma, homework in your backpack. Michael, books on the counter. Lily, crayons in their box. The children immediately began tidying up without any complaints or arguments. Marcus was stunned. Getting his kids to clean up usually required multiple requests, bargaining, and sometimes bribes. Grace had simply asked, and they eagerly complied. As the children bustled around following her gentle directions, Marcus tried to process what he was seeing. Who was this woman? How long had she been caring for his children? And why did they seem so comfortable with her, more comfortable than they were with him? The smell from the stove was incredible, something homey and comforting that made his stomach growl. He realized he hadn't eaten since the airplane meal 12 hours ago. More importantly, he couldn't remember the last time his kitchen had been used for actual cooking. He usually ordered takeout or had his meals delivered from restaurants. Okay, dinner's ready, Grace announced. Emma, would you please get the plates from the cabinet? Michael, can you grab forks and napkins? Lily, you can help by putting the water glasses on the table. Again, the children moved without complaint, each taking their assigned task seriously. Marcus watched in amazement as they transformed his sterile kitchen into something that felt warm and alive. Grace served what looked like homemade chicken and rice with vegetables, food that smelled like comfort itself. Miss Grace, this is so good, Michael said around a mouthful of food. Thank you, sweetie. My grandmother taught me this recipe when I was about your age. Will you teach me how to make it? Emma asked. If your parents say it's okay, I'd love to teach you. Cooking is a wonderful skill to have. Daddy doesn't cook, Lily announced matter-of-factly. He orders food from restaurants. Grace's expression grew thoughtful. Well, everyone has different talents. I'm sure your daddy is very good at lots of things. He's good at working, Michael said, not unkindly but with the observation of a child who rarely saw his father do anything else. Work is important, Grace replied diplomatically. Your daddy works hard to take care of you. Marcus felt a stab of pain at the exchange. From the mouths of babes. His children saw him as someone who worked, not as someone who cared for them in the ways that mattered. This stranger was showing them more nurturing attention in one evening than he'd managed in months. Miss Grace, Emma said quietly, I wish you could come to my dance recital. Mommy will be there, but I don't think Daddy will. The words hit Marcus like a physical blow. He'd completely forgotten about Emma's recital. His calendar was packed with meetings for the next 2 weeks, and he'd probably scheduled something right over it without thinking. When is your recital, sweetheart? Grace asked gently. Next Thursday at 7 o'clock. I'll ask your parents if I can attend. I'd love to see you dance. Really? Emma's voice was filled with hope. Really? I think you must be a wonderful dancer. I've been practicing every day. Want to see? Of course. Emma hopped down from her chair and began demonstrating her dance routine right there in the kitchen. Grace watched with complete attention, clapping and offering encouragement. Michael and Lily joined in, creating an impromptu performance that filled the room with joy. Marcus realized he was witnessing something precious, his children being children, feeling safe and loved and encouraged. When had he last seen them this uninhibited? When had he last given them his complete, undivided attention the way Grace was doing now? The scene was so beautiful and so foreign into his experience that he felt like an intruder watching through a window. This was what a home looked like. This was what family felt like. And, somehow, this young woman had created it effortlessly in his cold, expensive house. As Emma finished her dance, Grace applauded enthusiastically. That was absolutely beautiful. You're going to be amazing at your recital. Thanks, Miss Grace. You're the best. The simple words hung in the air. Marcus couldn't remember the last time one of his children had said anything like that to him. He was their father, the one who was supposed to be the best in their eyes. Instead, they reserved their affection for this woman who wasn't even family. Grace began cleaning up the dinner dishes, and, once again the children helped without being asked. They chatted easily about school, friends, and weekend plans. The conversation flowed naturally, punctuated by laughter and gentle teasing. It was the kind of family dinner Marcus had always imagined having but never achieved. All right, little ones, Grace said as she wiped down the counter. It's getting late. Time for baths and bedtime. Can you read us a story? Lily asked hopefully. If it's okay with your mommy and daddy, I'd be happy to. Daddy's not home yet, Michael said. He's probably still traveling. Grace paused in her cleaning. When do you expect him back? We never know, Emma said with a shrug that broke Marcus's heart. Sometimes he's gone for a long time. Well, I'm sure he misses you very much when he's away. I guess, Michael replied, unconvinced. The casualness of their acceptance hit Marcus hard. His children had grown accustomed to his absence. They'd stopped expecting him to be present for the small moments that made up their daily lives. He'd become a stranger in his own family, someone who provided financially but wasn't really part of their emotional world. Grace helped Lily down from her chair and began guiding the children toward the stairs. Bath time for you, little miss. Emma and Michael, did you finish your homework? Yes, Miss Grace, they chorused. Good. Teeth brushed, pajamas on, and I'll be up in a few minutes to check on everyone. As the children headed upstairs, chattering happily about their evening, Marcus stepped back further into the shadows. He felt like he was watching someone else's family, observing a life he'd never learned how to live. The ease with which Grace managed his children, the way they responded to her with such trust and affection, highlighted everything he was failing to provide. Grace finished tidying the kitchen, humming softly to herself. She moved with quiet efficiency, putting away dishes and wiping surfaces until everything gleamed. Then, she turned off the lights and headed toward the stairs to check on the children. Marcus remained frozen in place, his mind reeling. Who was this woman who had somehow become so integral to his children's lives? How had she earned their trust and affection so completely? And what did her presence in his home mean for him as a father? As he heard her gentle voice upstairs, reading a bedtime story to his children, Marcus realized that everything he thought he knew about his family was about to change. The sight of Grace caring for his children with such natural love and competence had shaken him to his core. For the first time in years, he was seeing what he'd been missing, what his children needed, and what kind of father he wanted to become. But first, he needed to understand who Grace was and how she'd become such an important part of his children's lives. The answers to those questions would determine everything that came next. Marcus waited in the shadows until he heard Grace's footsteps coming back down the stairs. His heart hammered against his ribs as he tried to decide what to do. Should he confront her immediately? Demand to know who she was and why she was in his home with his children? Or should he step back and observe more, try to understand the situation before acting? The rational part of his mind knew he should be angry. A stranger was in his home, caring for his children without his knowledge or permission. But the emotional part of him, the part that had watched his kids laugh and feel loved in a way he'd never managed to inspire, hesitated to destroy whatever magic had been happening in his kitchen. Grace appeared at the bottom of the stairs, checking her phone. In the soft light of the hallway, Marcus could see her more clearly. She was beautiful, but not in the polished, artificial way of the women who usually surrounded him in his business world. There was something natural and genuine about her, a warmth that seemed to radiate from within. She walked toward the front door, stopping to gather a light jacket and a small purse from the hall table. Marcus realized she was preparing to leave, and suddenly, he knew he couldn't let her go without answers. He stepped out of the shadows. "Excuse me." Grace spun around, her hand flying to her chest in surprise. When she saw Marcus, her eyes went wide with shock. For a moment, they stared at each other across the marble foyer, neither speaking. "Mr. Wellington," she finally said, her voice barely above a whisper. I didn't know you were back." Clearly. Marcus tried to keep his tone neutral, but he could hear the edge in his own voice. "I think we need to talk." Grace nodded, setting down her purse. "Of course. I can explain everything." "I certainly hope so." Marcus gestured toward his study. "Please." They walked in silence down the hallway. Marcus's study was his sanctuary, lined with leather-bound books he'd never read and expensive artwork that impressed clients. He sat behind his massive mahogany desk, a power position that had intimidated countless business rivals. But, as Grace settled into the chair across from him, he realized this wasn't a business negotiation. This was about his children, his family, his life. "Start from the beginning," he said. "Who are you, and what are you doing in my home with my children?" Grace took a deep breath, clasping her hands in her lap. "My name is Grace Okafor. I'm a graduate student at the university, studying early childhood education. I've been working as a nanny to help pay for my schooling." "A nanny?" "I never hired a nanny." "No, sir. Your ex-wife did. Mrs. Wellington hired me 6 months ago." Marcus felt something cold settle in his stomach. 6 months ago?" "Yes, sir. She said she needed help with the children after school and during the evenings when she had to work late. She's been handling a big project at her firm, and the hours have been demanding." 6 months. His children had been in the care of this woman for 6 months, and he'd had no idea. The realization of how disconnected he was from his family's daily life hit him like a sledgehammer. "Why wasn't I told about this arrangement?" Grace shifted uncomfortably in her chair. "Mrs. Wellington said she would discuss it with you." "I assumed. I thought you knew." Marcus rubbed his temples, feeling a headache building. Isabella hadn't mentioned hiring a nanny, but, then, again, they rarely communicated about anything beyond the bare minimum required for co-parenting. Their conversations were terse and businesslike, focused on pickup times and school events. He'd been so eager to avoid conflict with his ex-wife that he'd stopped asking questions about the children's daily lives. "Tell me about your arrangement with my ex-wife." "I pick up the children from school 3 days a week, Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday. Sometimes Friday if Mrs. Wellington has evening commitments. I help them with homework, prepare dinner, and stay with them until she gets home, usually around 8 or 9 o'clock." "And the children, they're comfortable with you?" Grace's face softened. "I hope so. They're wonderful kids, Mr. Wellington. Emma is so creative and kind. Michael is incredibly smart, though he struggles with confidence. And Lily." She smiled. "Lily has enough joy for 10 people. They've taught me as much as I've taught them." The genuine affection in her voice was unmistakable. This wasn't just a job for Grace, she truly cared about his children. Marcus found himself torn between gratitude and resentment. Grateful that someone was loving his kids, resentful that it wasn't him. "What do you know about me?" he asked. Grace hesitated. "Not much, sir. Mrs. Wellington told me you travel frequently for business. The children mention you sometimes, but..." She trailed off. "But what?" "I probably shouldn't say. It's not my place. I'm asking you to say it." Grace met his eyes directly. "They miss you. They want to know you better, but they don't know how. Emma practices her dance routines hoping you'll see them someday. Michael asks me to help him with his math because he says you don't have time. Lily draws pictures of our family and always includes you, even though..." "Even though what?" "Even though she can't really remember the last time you all did something together." The words stung because they were true. Marcus thought back to the last several months. There had been the business trip to Singapore, then, the crisis with the London hotel, followed by the merger negotiations that had consumed 6 weeks. He'd been home for scattered weekends, but, even then, his mind had been on work. He'd answered emails during dinner, taken calls during homework time, and treated his children's attempts at conversation as interruptions to more important tasks. "You must think I'm a terrible father." Grace shook her head quickly. "No, sir. I think you're a man trying to do his best in a difficult situation. Divorce is hard on everyone, especially children. And providing for your family is important too." Her diplomacy impressed him, but Marcus wanted honesty more than politeness. "What do you really think?" Grace was quiet for a long moment, clearly weighing her words. "I think your children love you very much, but they don't know how to reach you. I think you love them too, but you've convinced yourself that working hard is the same as caring for them. And I think..." She paused. "What?" "I think you're missing out on the best parts of being a father." The simple truth hit harder than any business setback ever had. Marcus had built a fortune, acquired companies, commanded respect from competitors around the world. But he was failing at the one thing that mattered most. "How long have you been working with children?" he asked, changing the subject. "Since I was 16. I started babysitting in my neighborhood, then worked at a daycare center during college. I have my degree in psychology and I'm working on my master's in early childhood education. I want to open my own learning center someday, focusing on children from underprivileged backgrounds." "You're from Nigeria originally?" Marcus had caught the slight accent when she spoke to the children. "Yes, sir. My family immigrated when I was 12. My father is a doctor at the university hospital, and my mother teaches high school mathematics." Marcus processed this information. Grace came from an educated family, was pursuing advanced degrees, and had extensive experience with children. She wasn't some random babysitter Isabella had found through an agency. She was qualified, dedicated, and genuinely caring. "What are your long-term goals?" "I hope to finish my master's degree next year, then, eventually pursue a PhD. I want to research early childhood development, particularly how trauma and family disruption affect learning and emotional growth. The irony wasn't lost on Marcus. The woman caring for his children was studying the very issues his family was struggling with. "And you see that in my children? Trauma from the divorce?" Grace chose her words carefully. "They're resilient kids, but, yes, the family changes have affected them. Emma has become very responsible, almost parental toward her siblings. Michael has some anxiety about academic performance. Lily asks a lot of questions about when the family will be together again." Each observation felt like a knife twist. Marcus had been so focused on minimizing the financial impact of the divorce that he'd ignored the emotional damage. He'd told himself the children were adjusting fine, that kids were naturally resilient. But Grace's professional assessment painted a different picture. "What would you recommend? As someone who studies this professionally? Honestly? The children need more stability and emotional connection. They need to know that even though their parents are divorced, they're still loved and prioritized. They need routines, traditions, and, most importantly, they need focused attention from the adults in their lives." Focused attention? Time when you're completely present with them. No phones, no work thoughts, no distractions. Just being together and engaging with their world. Marcus thought about the scene he'd witnessed in the kitchen. Grace had been doing exactly that, being completely present, engaging with each child's individual needs and interests. When was the last time he'd given his children that kind of attention? "Mrs. Wellington mentioned that you travel frequently," Grace continued. "When you are home, how do you usually spend time with the children?" Marcus felt embarrassed to answer. "We go out to dinner sometimes. Or I take them to movies. We stay at my penthouse downtown occasionally." Do they enjoy those activities? I think so. I mean, they don't complain. "Mr. Wellington, can I share something with you?" "Please." "Last month, Lily told me about a weekend she spent with you. You took them to an expensive restaurant for dinner. She said it was beautiful and the food was good, but what she remembered most was how you seemed worried the whole time. She said you kept checking your phone and looking around like you were expecting something bad to happen." The memory came flooding back. The merger negotiations had been at a critical point, and Marcus had been expecting a call from his lawyers all evening. He'd chosen the restaurant because it was quiet and upscale, somewhere he could talk business if needed. He'd thought he was giving his children a nice experience, but apparently all Lily had sensed was his distraction and anxiety. "Children are incredibly perceptive," Grace continued gently. "They can tell when you're physically present but mentally somewhere else. It actually makes them feel worse than if you weren't there at all, because they interpret your distraction as disinterest in them." "I never meant. I don't want them to feel that way." "I know you don't. But understanding impact versus intention is crucial when it comes to parenting. Your intention is to provide for them and spend time with them. But the impact of your distracted presence is that they feel unimportant to you." Marcus felt a weight settling in his chest. How many times had he unintentionally sent that message to his children? How many moments had he missed because his mind was on the next deal, the next crisis, the next opportunity to increase his wealth? "What do you think I should do?" Be present. Really present. When you're with them, put away the phone and focus completely on what they're saying and doing. Ask questions about their lives. Show genuine interest in their hobbies and friends and dreams. It sounds simple, but I'm not sure I know how to do that anymore. Grace smiled sympathetically. It takes practice. Start small. Maybe instead of taking them to expensive restaurants, try cooking a simple meal together. Or instead of buying tickets to events, ask them what they'd like to do and follow their lead. You make it sound easy. It's not easy, especially when you're learning new patterns. But it's simple. Children don't need expensive experiences. They need connection. Marcus thought about what he'd witnessed earlier. Grace hadn't taken his children anywhere or bought them anything. She'd simply been present in their space, engaged in their activities, interested in their thoughts and feelings. And the result had been more joy and contentment than he'd ever seen from them. "Can I ask you something personal?" Marcus said. "Of course. Why do you do this? You're clearly intelligent and capable. You could probably make more money doing something else. Why choose to care for other people's children?" Grace's eyes grew thoughtful. "When I was growing up, my parents worked long hours to establish themselves in a new country. I spent a lot of time with my grandmother, who took care of me after school. She couldn't speak much English, but she knew how to make me feel loved and secure. She taught me that caring for children isn't just about keeping them safe and fed. It's about nurturing their spirits and helping them believe in themselves. You want to be that person for other children." "Yes. And, honestly, I've learned as much from the children I've cared for as they've learned from me. Your kids have taught me about resilience, creativity, and the importance of family bonds. They've made me a better person." Marcus felt a pang of envy. This young woman, barely out of college, understood his children better than he did. She'd formed meaningful relationships with them while he'd remained a distant figure in their lives. "Grace, can I ask you to continue caring for my children?" She looked surprised. "Don't you want to discuss this with Mrs. Wellington first?" "I'll talk to Isabella, but I'm asking you. Will you continue to be part of my children's lives? If both you and Mrs. Wellington agree, then yes. I care about Emma, Michael, and Lily very much." "Good. But I want to change some things about the arrangement." "What kind of changes?" "I want to be more involved. I want you to teach me how to be the kind of father my children deserve." Grace's expression softened with surprise and something that might have been respect. "Mr. Wellington, that's wonderful. But you don't need me to teach you how to love your children. You need to spend time with them and let them teach you who they are. Will you help me do that? If you really want to change things, yes. But it can't be half-hearted. Children can sense when adults aren't fully committed to them. If you're going to do this, you have to be all in." Marcus thought about his calendar, packed with meetings and travel for the next 6 months. He thought about the deals pending, the projects requiring his personal attention, the empire that demanded his constant focus. Then, he thought about Emma dancing in the kitchen, hoping someone would see her. Michael struggling with homework while feeling not smart enough. Lily drawing pictures of a family she'd barely remembered being part of. "I'm all in," he said, and, for the first time in months, those words felt more important than any business decision he'd ever made. The next morning, Marcus did something he hadn't done in years. He called his assistant and cleared his entire afternoon schedule. He had meetings with potential investors, a conference call with the Tokyo office, and a dinner with board members. All of it would have to wait. He was going to pick up his children from school. Grace had given him their schedules before leaving the night before. Emma got out at 3:15, Michael at 3:30, and Lily at 2:45. He would start with Lily, pick up Emma next, and then Michael. The plan seemed simple enough, but, as Marcus sat in his car outside Lily's preschool at 2:40, his palms were sweating. When was the last time he'd done school pickup? He couldn't remember. Isabella always handled it, or now apparently Grace did. He watched other parents waiting in their cars or standing near the entrance, most of them mothers, a few fathers, all of them looking comfortable and familiar with the routine. Marcus felt like an imposter. The school doors opened and children began streaming out. Marcus spotted Lily immediately, her curly brown hair in pigtails, her pink backpack almost as big as she was. She looked around with the expression he'd seen countless times at family gatherings, searching for a familiar face. When she saw Marcus getting out of his car, her little face lit up with pure joy. "Daddy," she shrieked, running toward him with her arms outstretched. The force of her hug nearly knocked him backward. When was the last time anyone had been that excited to see him? His business associates greeted him with respectful nods. His ex-wife barely looked at him during kid exchanges. But Lily wrapped her small arms around his legs like he was the most wonderful surprise in the world. "What are you doing here, Daddy?" she asked, looking up at him with wide brown eyes. "I thought I'd pick you up today. Is that okay?" "Yes." "But, where's Miss Grace?" "She'll see you later. Today it's just me and you. And we're going to get Emma and Michael too." Lily clapped her hands together. "All of us together?" "All of us together." As they walked to the car, Lily chattered nonstop about her day. She'd painted a picture of a rainbow, played with blocks during free time, and learned a song about butterflies. Marcus found himself actually listening, not just waiting for her to finish talking so he could make a phone call or check his email. "Daddy, do you want to hear my butterfly song?" "I would love to hear your butterfly song." Lily launched into an enthusiastic rendition of a simple song about caterpillars becoming butterflies. Her voice was sweet but loud, and she added dramatic hand gestures that nearly knocked off her seatbelt. Marcus found himself smiling genuinely for the first time in weeks. Emma's school was only 5 minutes away. As they pulled up, Marcus could see groups of children waiting with parents or caregivers. He spotted Emma sitting alone on a bench, reading a book. She looked small and serious, older than her 8 years. When she saw Marcus and Lily approaching, her expression shifted from surprise to cautious hope. "Dad? What are you doing here?" "Picking up my kids," Marcus said simply. "Ready to go get Michael?" "Where's Miss Grace?" "She'll see us later. Today is just family time." Emma's smile was smaller than Lily's had been, more guarded, but genuine. "Okay. That sounds nice." In the car, Emma was quieter than her younger sister, but she listened to Lily's excited retelling of the butterfly song and even hummed along to parts of it. Marcus caught her eyes in the rearview mirror and winked. Her answering smile was like a small gift. Michael's middle school had a different energy entirely. Preteens clustered in groups, talking loudly and posturing for each other. Marcus spotted his son standing apart from the crowds, earbuds in, staring at his phone. There was something isolated about his posture that made Marcus's chest ache. When Michael saw his father approaching with his sisters, his expression was puzzled. "Dad? Is everything okay? Did something happen to Mom?" The fact that Michael's first assumption was crisis rather than pleasant surprise said something about their family dynamics that Marcus didn't want to examine too closely. "Everything's fine. I just thought I'd pick you guys up today." "Oh." Michael removed his earbuds and shrugged. "Okay." As they drove away from the school, Marcus realized he